A small town in the north of England, population 11,000, unremarkable by almost every measure, and yet as of this week it sits at the precise intersection of forces that could determine who leads Britain next. That is not hyperbole. That is the political geography of Makerfield in May 2026, and what is unfolding here carries implications that reach far beyond a single parliamentary by-election. Subscribe for more analysis. Here we don't sugarcoat, we expose what others are afraid to say. Andy Burnham makes it official on May 19th, confirming his Labour candidacy for the June 18th by-election with the kind of visual confidence, a Stanley Chow illustration, a "For Us" slogan that signals this is not a reluctant return to Westminster, but a calculated, choreographed entry into a contest he intends to win on his own terms.
I believe the by-election is very necessary. In my view, the time has come for a much bigger debate about how politics needs to change.
Simultaneously, Reform UK selects Robert Kenyon, a local councillor and self-described plucky plumber who pushed Labour hard at the 2024 general election with over 12,000 votes, and who, just a fortnight ago, on May 7th, was among the wave of Reform candidates that captured 24 of the 25 seats on Wigan Council in local elections that shook the foundations of a Labour stronghold the party had controlled for generations. Two candidacies, one constituency, and a question hanging over both of them that neither campaign fully wants to answer. Is this about Makerfield, or is this about the future of the Labour government itself? The Wigan Council result demands serious attention before anything else can be properly understood. 24 seats in a single night in a council Labour had owned for as long as political memory in the region stretches. That is not a protest vote, it is a structural collapse of assumed loyalty, and the speed with which it happened carries its own warning. These are not seats in the south of England where Labour has always battled against the grain. These are communities that Labour built its identity around, communities whose relationship with the party was less a political choice and more a cultural inheritance. When that inheritance is rejected at the ballot box with this level of unanimity, the question is not whether something has gone wrong. The question is whether what has gone wrong is fixable, and by whom. The voices from the streets of Bryn and Ashton in Makerfield do not read as the voices of ideological converts. Paul Riley, 41, voted for Starmer's Labour in 2024 and has now moved to Reform. He counts 20 broken promises in under 2 years of government and says plainly that even a Burnham-led Labour would still be Labour, a line that reveals the depth of the disillusionment he carries. This is not a voter who has been seduced by a rival party's vision. This is a voter who has withdrawn trust from a governing project and is using the available tools to register that withdrawal, regardless of which name is on the ballot paper. That distinction matters enormously for how this by-election result should be interpreted, whichever direction it falls. Lindsay Maloney, 61, offers a different reading. She watches people in her social circle move toward reform, notes that many of them cannot name the candidate they voted for, and interprets their choice not as ideological commitment but as emotional expression, frustration wearing the costume of political allegiance. She believes Burnham understands that disaffection in a way that Westminster Labour currently does not, that his years governing Greater Manchester have given him a register for working-class anger that translates into something more than campaign rhetoric. Whether her faith is vindicated on June 18th will tell us something important about whether the Burnham effect is a genuine political force or a projection of hopes onto a politician who has not yet been tested at national level under pressure. Thomas Davies, 74, a self-described floating voter who has never previously supported Labour, cuts to the heart of the political calculus with a directness that most political strategists spend entire careers trying to articulate. He wants Burnham to win because he wants Burnham to remove Starmer, Reeves, Lammy and Miliband from their positions. He is not voting for Labour's programme or Burnham's devolution agenda or any specific policy platform. He is voting for the mechanism that Burnham's presence in Parliament creates, the potential leverage over a government he believes needs wholesale leadership change at its summit. His reasoning about reform is equally sharp. One more MP in a small parliamentary group achieves nothing structural. The arithmetic of Westminster means that a Farage-aligned bloc, however energised, lacks the institutional power to force the changes he wants. Burnham, by contrast, re-entering Parliament as a figure with demonstrated public support and a leadership poll showing 59% of Labour members would back him against Starmer, carries a different kind of weight, the weight of a credible alternative that the governing party cannot simply ignore or absorb. Peter Thompson, 78, running his record shop in Ashton in Makerfield, fresh from welcoming a television crew from New York, the international media attention alone confirming that this by-election has broken through the boundaries of domestic political coverage, poses the question that the entire political class is privately wrestling with. If Burnham wins, does that validate Labour's policies and simply repudiate Starmer personally? Or does it signal something broader about the direction the party and the government need to travel? This is not a rhetorical question. It is the central interpretive challenge of the entire by-election, because the answer determines whether a Burnham victory produces genuine political change or simply substitutes one face at the top while leaving the underlying governing decisions intact. Thompson's scepticism about whether any of this makes a real difference to lives in Ashton in Makerfield carries its own weight, the weight of a community that has watched political dramas come and go without the texture of daily life fundamentally changing, and that has learned to maintain a certain protective distance from the promises that arrive with every campaign. Starmer's position throughout all of this is one of controlled exposure. He governs, he chairs cabinet, he refuses to set a departure timetable. In one sense, this is the only rational posture available to a sitting Prime Minister who has not lost a confidence vote. Resignation on the basis of polling among party members, however unfavourable, would set a precedent that no future Prime Minister could accept. But the political cost of that rationality is a government that appears to be conducting its business in the shadow of an ongoing leadership question, and governing in a shadow has consequences for credibility, for legislative momentum, for the confidence of international partners who need to know that the person they are negotiating with will still hold the same office in 6 months. The reform surge in Wigan complicates Burnham's calculation in ways his supporters may not fully want to acknowledge. If the disaffection in Makerfield runs as deep as May 7th suggested, Burnham cannot simply inherit the Labour vote and carry it to victory on the strength of his personal brand. He needs to peel back voters who have moved to reform, voters like Paul Riley who explicitly say they will not return to Labour regardless of the candidate. That is a much harder task than mobilising existing Labour support, and the campaign's first weeks will reveal whether his ground operation can reach those voters in the way his admirers believe his political identity can. The Makerfield by-election is, in the end, a test of something that British politics has been struggling to name clearly for several years: the relationship between institutional loyalty and earned trust. Labour's historical dominance in constituencies like this was built on institutional loyalty, on the idea that the party represented something larger than any individual politician, that voting Labour was an expression of community identity as much as political preference. That model is under sustained pressure from a political culture in which institutional loyalty has been replaced for many voters by a demand for demonstrated competence and visible results. Burnham represents the possibility that earned trust can rebuild what institutional loyalty has lost. Whether one parliamentary seat, one by-election, one candidate, however compelling, can carry that weight is the question that June 18th will begin but not finish answering. The consequences of that answer extend well beyond Makerfield, well beyond the Labour Party, and well into the question of what kind of political authority Britain's governing class can still command from the communities it was built to represent.